I'm with Mr. D.R. Karthikeyan, the former chief of the CBI, as well as the head of the special investigation team that probed the assassination of India's former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. Mr. Srikumar, who was an investigator, very much part of the same SIT, the special investigation team, and Neena Gopal, ace journalist, who's written a book called The Assassination of Rajiv Gandhi. Neena was the last journalist who interviewed Rajiv Gandhi. She was in the same car as him that fateful night of the 21st of May, 1991, when the car reached G Perarivalan in Tamil Nadu, and we all know what happened after that. And today we are discussing the release of G Perarivalan, one of the 7 accused in the assassination of the former Prime Minister. But we're not just discussing Mr. Perarivalan's release. We're also talking a little bit about that sordid chapter in India's history that begins in the early 1980s, 1982, 1983, when Indira Gandhi, then Prime Minister, allows the training of Tamil rebels, including of the LTTE, inside Tamil Nadu, and which ends very, very tragically with the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi in 1991. So about 8 or 9 years. But first of all, let me welcome all of you to ThePrint. Welcome, gentlemen, and Neena.
Thank you.
So I'm connecting the time zones and the cities. Neena Gopal is in the US, Mr. Karthikeyan is in Delhi, and Mr. Srikumar is in Bangalore. I'm in Delhi, of course. Mr. Karthikeyan, can I come to you first? Your first comments on the release of Mr. Perarivalan. He was only 19 years old when the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi took place in 1991. He was accused then of procuring 2 9-volt batteries. A very young man, 19 years old. 31 years later, he's finally out. The Supreme Court has let him off. But your first comments on this matter?
No comments. I told you long back, we'll not discuss any individual.
Okay.
Yes.
But do you think that Mr. Perarivalan...
I'm sorry. Don't provoke me.
Can I ask you, Mr. Srikumar, you were very much part of Mr. Karthikeyan's team that investigated the conspiracy, the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi. Your comments on this man who has been in jail for 31 years. We marked the assassination only a few days ago on the 21st of May, 31 long years. Do you think that the SIT that went into the investigation did its job correctly? The fact that 7 people, of which 6 are still in jail, what are your first comments on that?
Thoughts go to the victim. And the victims were not only one former Prime Minister and his family and the nation by itself. Mm-hmm. There were 16 others who died, including 9 policemen who were on duty on that particular day. And there were other private persons, including an MLC, ex-MLC, who all died, 16 of them. And more than 47 were injured in the blast. Mm-hmm. And very recently, I read about Pradeep Philip, who was an ASP, who was there. He's still carrying the pellets in his body. And he has now retired as the DG of the police in Tamil Nadu.
I'm going to ask you, Mr. Karthikeyan, the SIT that you headed in 1991, you took about a year. Actually, that was remarkably a very short period of time to investigate the assassination. Give us a flavor of what you did, how you put the pieces together to arrive at this conclusion, and in which 26 people were then accused.
Okay, it's a long story, but anyway, try to make it short.
Yeah.
21st September 1991, I was in my headquarters, CRP headquarters in Hyderabad. Burma was the PTA correspondent. Just now I got a message from Beijing. He's in charge of the PTA in China. Just now I got a message.
Okay.
After having read what is my comments on the Hindu. He called me to say, sir, there is a blast in G Perarivalan, Rajiv Gandhi's. Little few minutes later, he said, Rajiv Gandhi is believed killed. I was shocked because, I had great admiration for Rajiv Gandhi. It's known. I've written about it in my book also. But few minutes later, I got a call from the then director CBI. He talked to me about, he said what happened and all that. And He said it may, both the IB dealing with internal intelligence and RNW dealing with external intelligence, they have no clue who could have done that. So it looks like a blind case. It may end up, I'm quoting his word because he's written in the book also later on, it may end up like Kennedy assassination. It may remain. But all the same, they want CBI to take up the investigation. Everybody will see that you are the right person to get the team. I went by the special flight, landed in Bangalore and Chennai. So all the officers, CBI officers in Madras, you see, Tamil Nadu officers came. Why do they? There's nothing in this case. 17 dead bodies, Rajiv Gandhi's body beyond recognition. One head of a woman, and then 2 legs somewhere, 1 leg. I said, don't demotivate me. I have accepted the task. I feel nothing is impossible. We'll do our best. That's where it started. Now, I'll stop it here. Otherwise, then what's the next question?
Well, the next question is to Mr. Srikumar. When you joined the investigation with Mr. Karthikeyan and the others, there must have been quite a few of you. Give me a flavor of how you carried out this investigation. What exactly did you do? How did you piece together the various pieces?
It was a stupendous task with 4 DIGs and 8 SPs and more than 100 inspectors and deputy SPs working in the team under Mr. Karthikeyan's guidance. But by the time I joined, with us about 10 days later, from the 10-15 days after the assassination, the structure of who should be doing what and how it is to be done was all put into place. And it was a crime from the criminal right from the word go. And we were only sticking to the truth. It was a search for the truth. And we were working for the first few months, probably about 20 hours a day. And probably we just had a few hours of sleep day and night. And after the Conan Kunte encounter, where the one-eyed Jack was also located and neutralized, or he killed himself. After that, only we had to put so many things work. So for about a year, we were working very hard for at least 18 hours a day, and barely having sleep and this thing. It was a challenge, and I think we delivered. And we are happy that we delivered. The point to note is only this: investigation was completed in 1 year, and charge sheet was given against 42 accused, of which 3 were in a foreign country where even the army could not go.
You're talking about Prabhakaran, the LTTE.
Yes, and 13 were killed during the operations. They are committed suicide. 13 were Indian and 13 were Sri Lankans.
Okay.
Mind you, the judge who handled the case took 3 years to, and even then he could not given the judgment. Another judge came and he took that, and he was handling only one case, whereas our investigation was completed in 1 year. That is a challenge that was given to us, and we faced it. And we are happy that, yes, that is what is required to be done, and we did it.
Okay.
Now the other things are there, it will come later.
Okay. Neena, you were the last journalist to have interviewed Rajiv Gandhi that fateful night, that fateful evening on the 21st of May on your way to Sri Perumbudur. Now, the question that India has asked itself over and over again, some have got the answers, but it's a question that still dominates our mind 31 years on. Why was Rajiv Gandhi killed? Just 4 years before, in 1987, he had signed the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord in Sri Lanka with then President Julius Jayawardene. So what happened 4 years later? Why was India's former Prime Minister assassinated?
Because basically, I think this was a fallout also of Bangladesh. You see, the Sri Lankan government was petrified, was absolutely convinced that Rajiv Gandhi would do what Indira Gandhi did to Bangladesh. That was one, which is why they were trying to preempt this whole thing where Jayawardena and Premadasa and all of these people who did not trust India at all, especially the manner in which our ambassadors Dikshit and Mr. Parthasarthi and whoever else that Rajiv Gandhi sent to talk to Jayabardhana did not win the trust of the Sri Lankans. And so, right from the beginning, when this whole Indian peacekeeping force idea came up, the deal was to keep the LTTE in check and to promote the more moderate Tamils. And neither of that worked in India's favor, because Prabhakaran had sent emissary after emissary quietly to Rajiv Gandhi to check out the way he was going, what he was going to do after the whole IPKF, just before the IPKF thing happened.
Okay.
And he realized that if Rajiv Gandhi came to power, and he would have come to power in a huge way. I mean, he was set to sweep the election. The LTT would not get the elam that they wanted.
Okay.
That was the sum and substance of the suspicions that drove Prabhakaran to suddenly turn from this patsy. I mean, he was also somebody. I mean, you mentioned all the terror groups the Tamil groups that were trained in South India.
Yeah.
One of them was the LTT, and some of them was sent. The woman, for instance, the woman who headed his unit, his women's unit, was sent to Palestine to work with George Habash. So, there's a long history of training that they all got from various people. So Prabhakaran, so the point I basically want to make is that Prabhakaran also did not trust Rajiv at the end of the day. Despite the fact that the RNW, the man who was entrusted to looking after Prabhakaran, or basically keeping Prabhakaran on his side, was always believed. I mean, right till before he died, I remember this gentleman telling me that Prabhakaran, he never ever believed that Prabhakaran would turn around and bite India the way he did.
In fact, the third day itself, the Hindu wrote an editorial, it can be anybody but not LTTE. Mr. R admitted later on, they did go wrong.
Why do you think the Hindu did that?
Well, I don't want to go into what Neena's theory. I may have slight variation. That's not important today.
No, but tell me, what is your thought? Tell me your thought.
Basically, it will come to that, One is because IPK was sent. IPK was sent for peacekeeping to disarm the LTTE. But then Prabhakaran said, my strength is my arms. If I give away my arm, what is that? They are going to dominate. So they were not prepared to give up the arm. I'm just making it very briefly. For more elaborate answer, you must go into my book. I told you long back. Why LTTE? I have written one chapter also on that. Why there was so much of injustice done to the Tamils by the Sri Lankan. Again and again. And then, they were all, how they got split into it. They went to Israel, got training. They came to India, also got training. One is, to put it very briefly, one is to take revenge on what IPK did to them. Number two, as Neena said, Rajiv Gandhi, they thought he may come back to power and he may send back the force again. So they decided he should go. As she rightly said, at least two emissaries. There was no record, we have found out. Later on, we examined them also. One gentleman from London, one from, their own quiet here. They were sent to Rajiv Gandhi. Okay, we'll forget the past. What about future? He said, no, I will never allow the division of Sri Lanka. Because only my other parties didn't make the statement. So they had to take revenge of. They also lost thousands of people. We lost thousands of, more than 1,200 soldiers. Many were aimed. Our people are wondering, why are we here fighting the war between the Sri Lankan, Tamils and Sri Lankans? Why are we getting killed here? So the morale of the army was also very low. So I went for an assessment even before assassination. I was requested by the government, TNCH of the cabinet secretary. I went for an assessment. I said, the morale of the Indian army was so low. The generals were telling me, sir, we also don't know why you are here. Our soldiers are getting killed for. Why should we fight this war? I came back and told them we should withdraw. If we have anything to do with Sri Lanka, there is no way except talking to LTTE. They were holding the power at that time. We should withdraw. I gave a report. No, by then, it all became too late. It's a different story. It's not important for you. So only to take revenge. Number two, to prevent Rajiv Gandhi, in case he comes to power, he is not going to forget the past. He will ensure that, Sri Lanka, Tamil, there will not be a Tamil here. So they said he has to go. At the highest level, Prabhakaran decided only he and the intelligence, only 2-3 people knew, not They're not even all the top leaders were consulted. It was a very top secret operation that went on, and they very executed it also from their point of view very perfectly, neatly.
Right.
They thought, because earlier, when Padmanabha and others were killed a year earlier, broad daylight in Madras city, they went away, nothing happened. So they thought this also will be a very successful operation. It will planned to be remain a mystery forever. That was the planning. But they did not realize that, they have written all that is there. We never realized that the SIT will adopt these operations. They were exposed.
Mr. Srikumar, can I come to you now and take you a little bit further back into history, into the early 80s? Neena said that one of the reasons why the Tamil rebels, including the LTTE, were trained inside Tamil Nadu, then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi allowed the training. Why do you think this happened?
I would not like to go into those aspects of it. I would like to tell you only this, that the charge sheet where the motive has been identified and the killers have been identified, that it is been only LTTE and nobody else. And LTTE, our investigation showed that they are not going to be listening to somebody else or be a handmaiden for somebody else. So it is LTTE that carried out the assassination, planned it and executed it. And they wanted to get away with it without their name coming out anywhere. And to that extent, everything was planned. And it could have also gone on that way, but for our tireless effort, we located the people who executed it, people who conspired sitting in Jaffna jungles, who sent a team to land clandestinely in India and then take up positions, safe houses, do the job, unmindful of whoever is there during that election, because they didn't want the elections to throw up the former Prime Minister again as a PM. That was the understanding which they had about the whole thing.
But one of the people, Mr. Perarivalan, who has just been released, one of them, he was, of course, 19 years old at the time. He says that he is innocent because he didn't know that the 2 batteries that he bought, these 9-volt batteries, were going to be used to be put into the time bomb that killed Rajiv Gandhi.
If you read the judgment of the trial court, very clear, there are some other charges of he having gone to Jaffna jungles and stayed there for 5 months in the year before the assassination. He brought the 2-volume compilation of satanic forces. That is what they call the IPKF. They brought the compilation, they were printing it, and they were supposed to be distributing it. He did not simply give the power battery. He also purchased a motorcycle for Shivarasan to move around he gave a multimeter, so many things. So these are all said in the judgment. So if somebody has to know what has been done, the charge sheet, which has been proved to be true by the trial court, and ultimately the Supreme Court also upheld the death penalty of a few of them. The question is, why 26 people should die for only one former Prime Minister? No, I told you, 16 people died on the spot. Right. 43 others were injured. If Sidhu can be sent to jail for only one year, if 43 people were injured and 16 people were dead, even at one year for each injury and 3 years for wanton killing.
Yeah.
You can see, and sentence has to go on this thing. Perarivalan had 16 counts of murder proved against him well. That's the thing. Now, what happened subsequently, we all have to ponder, and we have to talk about. We have to start talking about the restorative justice for all the victims. Whether they have a say in this matter, or only the accused will keep on banging the roads of the doors of justice, and it will be they will only be heard. The others will not be heard. We have to think about restorative justice, which is practiced in so many other countries.
Yeah,
the victims have to be compensated for the harm come to them.
Now that's a fair point, Mr. Srikumar.
Yeah.
Neena, can I ask you, in your book on the assassination, there are several very interesting nuggets. I mean, one of them is about the time when, before the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord, that's before 1987, Prabhakaran actually comes to Delhi where he meets Rajiv Gandhi. And then you go on to talk about how Rahul Gandhi, Rajiv's son, tell us a little bit about that anecdote. I don't want to give it away.
See, basically what happened is that Prabhakaran was brought there and kept under house arrest. He was in that Ashoka hotel and kept in a room there and not allowed to meet anybody else. While the rest of the other guys, PLOT and EPRLF and all those guys, met Rajiv and they came to some kind of they had a discussion on what to do going forward. It was only Prabhakaran who was the sort of the maverick who would not give in and not agree to pull back his forces or stop the violence and so on. So Rajiv brought him, this man, the RANW guy who was in charge of Prabhakaran, brought him to meet Rajiv at his home. Can you imagine? In his house.
Brought Prabhakaran to meet Rajiv Gandhi.
Yes, personally, one-on-one. And as this guy told me, he said Rahul was just 11, or I don't know how old he was. He was just a kid. So Rajiv Gandhi, as a gesture, of goodwill, told Rahul, I just got to go get my bulletproof vest, which is in my bedroom, and let's give it to him. So he handed it over to Rahul is the one who handed it over to Prabhakaran, with Rajiv giving him a big hug and saying, take care of yourself. And I know for a fact that Prabhakaran was taken back to his hotel room, and he dialed a particular Tamil MP or MP who was a good friend of his, who I shall not name because I'll get into trouble, and vented against Rajiv. That itself should have been a giveaway that this man was not going to back off. And even during the IPKF, operations, there are Air Force, there are pilots, particularly very high-level pilot who told me that they had the exact position where Prabhakaran was hiding, because Prabhakaran changed his hiding place every night, and they knew exactly where he was. They alerted the general that they would they could bump him off, and the no came from Delhi. So I don't know why they kept him alive, frankly. But they could have easily got him, because he was the one who did all the. It was the LTTE that did the most damage to the IPKF. It wasn't the others.
So, Mr. Karthikeyan, I mean, these are stories of intelligence failures, surely. What Neena is recounting and what you know, of course. So intelligence failure after intelligence failure, or perhaps a lack of understanding of the situation?
Anyhow, I am not going to sit in judgment on that now. I'm going to share that. Whatever we have found out, we have written. We have given reports to the government also. On my visit to Sri Lanka earlier, everything is there on confidential document. It became public also later on. Now, coming back to your main question, I want to tell you only this much. Normally, I refuse to talk to anybody. See, section 15 of TADA says, confessions can be recorded by a superintendent of police. Actually, at that time, it was thought that on that basis alone, conviction is possible. But I told my officers, by all means, you record the confession, as they say, but don't depend on that, because one day before the Supreme Court will say, no, you cannot make a conviction only on the confession. So internally, I said, every statement made in the confession statement should be supported by independent evidence. So I only want to make this statement I want to make. Nobody is convicted only on the basis of a confession. Though at that time, the TADA allowed us secure conviction. I said, no, it will not happen. It is not correct also. So it's to say that somebody's conviction, not on confession alone. Now, Srikumar has told some aspects of that. I would refuse to go into that now. Now, this is meticulous in its planning and perfection in execution. Low-lying operations, everything. They had done everything we came to know later on. There were some communications, wireless communications between Jaffna, their headquarters, and their operatives in India, in Tamil Nadu. They went and tried this, what's called dry run with VP Singh, former Prime Minister. And they said also they were targeting somebody. But those coded messages could be deciphered only during the investigation. If they had been deciphered at that time, it was difficult because though they learned many things from us, they went little abroad. Once I would say, it was difficult. Our people were trying, obviously, they could not decipher at that time. During the investigation, when we deciphered, if that had been deciphered, they know they are targeting an important person in Tamil Nadu. Mm-hmm. That way, every assassination you can attribute to some failure. Otherwise, why should they be killed?
Right.
Anywhere the assassination takes place because something has gone wrong, something could not happen. Even on the street itself, G Perarivalan itself, how did she come in? They were not allowed to come in. How did they come in? Why they were not frisked? See, all these stories, there is no end to it. All that have been discussed, thousands of hours of discussion, TV, paper, everything. I'm just telling you, it is a very perfect execution. Because they are willing to die. They were not even met him. They said, our leader knows what is good for us. They said, why do you die? When we go for operation, people have already taken cyanide capsules. So many died. We could not catch them. They said, they are not met because they think it's an honor. You know very well, there's a big famous BBC documentary also, Suicide Killer. They say, for an operation, because they are also subject to so much of indignity and tortured by the government at that time, or you can say the forces, whatever it is.
Right.
That is their story. So they said, if you are going to be caught, that's why when they graduate after the training, they are given a capsule. That is to say, we will die. So they say, we will die. That's how they, towards the Conan Conte also, they have written a note telling that, CBI adopted, SIT adopted novel methods, we could not.
Mr. Srikumar, you're a police officer. You have been a police officer for several decades. Now, at the time in Tamil Nadu, what was the situation at the time? I want you to compare it with what there is today. So 31 years on, even today, the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, after Perarivalan's release, hugged him. But at the time in the 80s, in the entire decade, now, as a police officer, was there a lot of pro-LTTE feeling? Can you tell us a little bit?
There was an incident where Mr. Mohandas was the DG, where disarmed many people and overnight so many arms and ammunition were recovered. After the assassination, when we went around and toured, we find that so much of smuggling of explosives, diesel, so many things was going on, and the logistics and supply needed for the LTTE to fight the Sri Lankan army, quite a lot of it was coming from India. Mm-hmm. And there were sympathizers all over, and there were sympathizers all over the world. In fact, there were procurement and other things going on all over the world. So they were a very well-knit organization. They were fighting for themselves, and they were fighting because the Sri Lankan army was bombarding when children were dying, etc.
But Prabhakaran's father was also living in Tamil Nadu. Surely you knew about that. The government knew about that.
No, that is the humanitarian angle has also to be kept in mind. We are only going after the people who were entrusted with the job of assassination and who carried out the thing. Mm-hmm. And we brought it to the notice of the government about the other activities which are going on. That is where we later on the LTTE was made a banned organization, etc.
Right.
Sympathizers, etc. So this is a big problem which the people in power, both in the state and the center, will have to deal with it. As investigator, as a policeman, I am only doing the investigation of it. Right. Or if I am doing intelligence collection, I am collecting the intelligence and forwarding it to the people to take the decision.
See, the question is, my task was, who killed Rajiv Gandhi? Why? How? In the process we found, we went to the history also. Why the Tamil Nadu was not because of the lot of atrocities committed against the minority Tamils in Sri Lanka by the majority Sinhalese and their forces, they, up to a point, they adopted democratic means, but they were being suppressed. So some people left Sri Lanka. And then those who said, why should we surrender? They also armed themselves. They also armed them, because there are splinter groups there also within themselves also. They said, no, we will not. That's how. The sympathy was there, not only Tamil Nadu. Delhi supported. Delhi supported them, you know, all on part of history. I think Neena also has written the book.
Why did Delhi support them, Mr. Karthikeyan?
Ask Neena.
No, I'm asking you.
No, Delhi supported because the pressure, because, you know, the pressure from Tamil Nadu also, they said, you know, people of Indian origin, they are being subjected to torture, atrocities and all that. And then, so there was sympathy, pressure. So there was, otherwise the government of India, why would they support it?
Mm-hmm.
They said, you know, they have to be, they only were taught. Some were trained in Israel, some were trained in India also. These are all known. There's nothing, I'm not telling you a secret. That was the situation. Then LTTE became a dominant force later on. Otherwise, the support was for Sri Lankan Tamils being put to it. I only request you before you conclude that chapter on my book you read. And what I've written to the government of India is there, published. It's in all languages also. How LTTE grew, how it became a powerful thing. The people thought they are the only saviors of the Tamils. That's why when Prabhakaran says, this is a suicide mission, people go running, I will go. Voluntary. And they think it's a great honor to be with him and then go happily.
I have a question. You know, you talked about both Mr. Karthikeyan and Mr. Srikumar are talking about people who took the suicide pill, the cyanide pill. How did why did Athare not take it? I mean, she was the backup suicide bomber. So it's always fascinated me that she never took that cyanide pill. And she allowed herself to stay in that jail, God knows for how long. These guys, she was interrogated, and she spilled the beans. She's the one who pointed our investigators in the right direction on the landing points and the connecting points. Isn't that true, Mr. Srikumar?
Not correct. You're not right.
No?
You're not right, but I don't want to go into the discussion on that. You're totally wrong in that. Nobody, you see, once they are caught, there was no opportunity for them to take the pills. People who were at children, young boys were really very sad. They said this is the only way of serving the motherland cause.
So why was Athare the exception?
How many people took the pill and died in Trichy, in Bangalore, in Mandya?
Before it could reach
places.
Very sad that way.
A very sad thing. That is a commitment which you have to learn from.
But these are Indians. These are Indians who
Sri Lankans, people who are having sympathy, they were also going with it.
See,
to Neena's question, why didn't Athare take the cyanide pill?
How she was caught before she took the pill, and she didn't have it at that point of time. That's all. Any number of reasons.
But she had it around her neck, is what somebody said to me.
No. We didn't find at least I don't recollect having found a...
Not correct.
There is absolutely no sympathy, definitely not. No sympathy at all for the LTT. But my question to you, Neena, is when Perarivalan was released, M.K. Stalin, the chief minister, hugged him. A lot of other anti-death penalty activists were celebrated the release. And rightfully so. I'm also one of them. I don't think the death penalty is a good idea at all. But that's not the point. The point is that the sentiment, the coalition in Tamil Nadu, the ruling coalition, the Congress party is very upset. But the question to you is, what is this sentiment today about?
Well, basically, I think the sympathy for the Tamil, the fate of the Elam Tamils, I mean the Highland Tamils and the Jaffna Tamils, and even the Muslim Tamils is there. That cannot go away. That is not going to go away because Mullavaikal, when the LTT used the Tamil people as human, sort of protection, and they were all gunned down by the Sri Lankan army. I mean, that genocide has not been even acknowledged. The UN High Commission for Refugees keeps on talking about it and says that it will come up in this case and it will come up, but it hasn't happened. So the sense of grievance that the overseas Tamil has, whether it is in India or Australia or Canada, continues to exist. That is not going to go away. And let's not forget.
I entirely agree.
And let's not forget.
If thousands were killed, atrocities were committed, but nothing has happened. So the anger is still there.
There is.
Innocent people. It's not a question of the militant movements.
And I don't think the DMK, the DMK or the Anna DMK can afford to ignore that. It is political capital that they are tapping into as well. It may not be a force, a huge force as yet, but it is there. You can't upset and the sense of kinship that exists even today between the Jaffna Tamils and our Tamil people is not going to go away that lightly. Rajiv Gandhi's killing upset them, yes.
See,
that was seen as unfair, but that's gone.
Also, people are angry. What is called 13th Amendment to the Constitution.
Yes.
They promised to implement Sri Lanka, they are not implemented.
Mr. Karthikeyan, 1 second. You're talking about the 13th Amendment to the Sri Lankan Constitution.
Yes, of course.
Correct.
No, that is supposed to give some rights, to the Tamil. That is the solution.
It's supposed to set up district councils.
They are not implemented.
District councils.
So, Mr. Karthikeyan, the fact that the Sri Lankan government still, despite the fact that so many thousands of people have been killed on both sides, Indians have died, Sri Lankans have died, Indian Tamils have died, Sri Lankan Tamils have died. Now, the IPKF, a lot of people lost their lives. Despite that, the Sri Lankan government continues not to implement the 13th Amendment, which gives real powers, land powers, police powers to the Tamils.
Within the Constitution. Within the Constitution.
United
Sri Lanka, they have not done it even today. So the problem still persists. That is why you find, particularly Sri Lankan Tamils all over the world, they are still sympathetic to the cause. May not be for a militant movement. Still, they are angry with the Sri Lankan government. They also expect the government of India also to put pressure on Sri Lanka to implement at least the minimum threshold was 13th Amendment accepted, agreed by the government. They have not implemented it. Because I know very well, I have studied the whole thing. There's a chapter in my book also. There's all limited powers, land, all these things, Otherwise, there's a chief. I won't see the chief minister, even then there was a chief minister. Vadraj Permont, chief minister. There was chief minister, but he cannot even call you a constable. He can't do anything with the land, for name's sake. So they said, give some autonomy, not independence. But even that is not been. So I told in a meeting here with the Rajpakse in the Hindustan Times Leadership Summit, I told them, unless you implement the 13th Amendment, autonomy, we are implementing, he was telling. Publicly asked the question.
But sir, that 13th Amendment is never going to happen because, if you've traveled to Sri Lanka recently, as I have in the last couple of years, the north and the east is like a huge army cantonment. City after city, farm after farm has been taken over by the Sri Lankan army. It no longer is an agrarian, when the LTTE was in power, it was an agrarian community. Of course, they had their little, sort of battalions here and there. But today, everywhere that you go, you are stopped, you are checked by the Sri Lankan army. They've taken over the north, they've taken over the east. They're not going to hand over, they're not going to devolve power by any stretch of the imagination to the Tamil politicians.
There will be no peace in Sri Lanka forever, unless
the might of the gun
is counted. Minimum guarantee is 13th Amendment. Minimum. That is little limited autonomy within the United Sri Lanka foundation. If that is not done, this will persist. It will keep erupting from time to time.
Last question to you, Mr. Srikumar. Perarivalan has been released from jail by the Supreme Court invoking Article 142, which mandates complete justice for all citizens. What about the others? There are 6 more convicts in jail. One of them is an Indian, but the others are Sri Lankan. What about them?
I want Article 142 to be used in every case, complete justice to be done. Every case, not only the 7 accused in one case. I want every Article 142 to be used more and more, but that is up to the Supreme Court to decide.
Last comment.
Including on police reforms, for example.
Last comments from you, Mr. Karthikeyan.
See, the Supreme Court has given the verdict. I said that it is expected. I was expecting this to happen. I respect it, that's all. See, Jyoti, understand, when we start the investigation, allegations were made against every leader, I'm telling you, underline, of every party. And within the party, they were making allegations against me. We went with an open mind only from crime to the criminal. Now, why should we pick up these 44 persons or 26 persons or the 7 persons? Have they done anything against us? What went on the basis of evidence, oral evidence, documentary evidence, circumstantial evidence, scientific evidence, and we found and they placed it before the court of law. If the court gives a verdict, there is nothing personal against any of them.
Right, absolutely.
So ultimately, the Supreme Court has upheld also. So what we do with anybody is not my concern. It is for the Supreme Court of India to decide. Then death penalty or not, again. Long back I said when it was commuted, death to life imprisonment, I said openly, I welcome it. Because you can't keep on telling I am going to kill you every day for... But whether death penalty should be abolished or not, it is for the will of the people to decide. Each country will decide whether the society is ripe enough to live without death penalty. Now, so many terrorist offences happening, hired killers are there, people have gone sentenced to death, but come up 6 years, 7 years, it has come out also. So it's for the parliament to take a decision whether this country can live without death penalty or not. It's not for you or me or even the Supreme Court up to a point. But ultimately, the will of the people reflected in the parliament. Parliament should decide.
Right. Neena, you have the last word.
No, the irony also, Jyoti, is that very few people know that when Prabhakaran was surrounded at Mullavikal and the Gotabaya's forces were surrounding him and about to kill him, he sent out feelers to the Indian government. He sent out an emissary who was secretly flown to Delhi, who had a meeting with the Manmohan Singh government and, of course, was rebuffed. But that story has still not been fully explored. Imagine so many years after Rajiv Gandhi's assassination.
Tell us, what do you know about it? Tell us what you know about it.
Well, I know for a fact because I was sitting in a hotel in a reception, in Colombo, and talking to the editor of a newspaper, and that I finished that interview, and some guy from nowhere walked up to me and said, "Do you know who I am?" So I said, "No, I have no idea who you are." He said, "I was the emissary who was sent by Prabhakaran through your embassy to meet the top guys in Delhi." And I said, "Then what happened?" I said, "What happened to you?" This was in February of that year, of 2009. Yeah. And he said that when he landed, when he came back, he was given a entry to the highest levels of government in India. When he came back, he was arrested, thrown in jail by Gotabaya, and not seen for the next till May, June, after the killings took place. But I mean, the fact that Prabhakaran had the gall to imagine that he could actually get away with something like that, and the Indian Navy and the American US Navy actually also helped the Sri Lankan Navy to sort of, build a wall in the sea.
Yeah, I think
see to it that then. Yeah, that I think is public knowledge, but this really startled me.
You're absolutely right, Neena, because the former National Security Advisor, Mr. Shiv Shankar Menon, has also written about it. The fact that the LTTE wanted Prabhakaran to escape from Jaffna. Yeah. The Norwegians were in favor of letting that escape.
Eric Solheim, yes.
But the Indian government, along with the Sri Lankan government at the time, Mahinda Rajapaksa was president, and his brother, like you said, Gotabaya was then the defense minister. I think they held firm and didn't allow Prabhakaran to escape. But I'd like to bring this conversation to a close and like to thank you, Neena Gopal, for joining us from the US. Mr. Karthikeyan, thank you so much for your time, for your explanations, for giving us a perspective on what happened and how you and Mr. Srikumar and many others solved the conspiracy behind the assassination of India's former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. Thank you all for joining me in The Print today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.